Hello, welcome to another real-life tutorial where today I'm going to show you how you can get the most out of this wild field garlic by turning it into a soup perfect for winter survival. In a previous video I demonstrated how to identify and harvest this plant. If you haven't seen that, it'll be on screen now. Now, this recipe works perfectly on a campfire, but for today's video I'll be heading indoors for a couple of reasons. The main reason is that campfire cooking is difficult. If you're just learning this, I think you should start at least the first time on the stove. As far as recipes for campfire cooking go, this is a pretty easy one, but it's better to start at level 1 than jump right into level 10 and expect failure several times. And the other reason is that you may not be doing this for wilderness survival per se. I mean, these days money can be tight, and this is free. The first step is pretty self-explanatory, but you need to wash these very thoroughly. They're covered in dirt, debris, and outer husks, so you need to get all that off. A good idea is to rinse them off as a whole, and then start picking through individuals and cleaning those up. Alright, we've got them reasonably cleaned up, but the next step is to really get all of this dirt and other undesirable stuff off. Now, don't be cheap about this. Remember, these are invasive and free. In short, you want to trim off anything you're not comfortable eating. Now, that varies depending on the quality you end up getting. Sometimes these are beautiful right out of the ground. Other times you need to do a lot of work, like with these. And also how hungry you are. If you're really in a wilderness survival situation, it might be worth it to just boil these up in a pot and eat them. So in my opinion, the fastest way to clean these is to cut off the end with a knife and then just squeeze the outer layers. They should bunch up and come off, and then you can just slide them down the field garlic plant. And then you can just rip off any end bits. Well, that's that. As you can see, I had to get rid of a lot of material. Unfortunately, due to environmental conditions, probably snow, these weren't the best quality. You can see I had to get rid of quite a lot of the bulb in some cases. So I gave these another rinse because why not? And now the next step is to cut these up. And I would suggest to cut them up much smaller than you would think you would like. Specifically because wild plants like this are often far more fibrous and tough than normal supermarket produce. Once you get to about here, you're going to stop and reserve these for later. You're going to cut these up as the soup is cooking and add them in a few minutes before you're ready to serve, because these green parts tend to get very vegetal if you cook them too long. Next step, if you've got it, I would suggest adding some salt to this, specifically because it helps draw out some of the flavors and break up those cell walls before these actually start cooking. Keep in mind, you're seasoning a whole soup here, so you can afford to add quite a bit of salt at this stage. As the salt's working, you're going to want to start a pot of water boiling. Now you could fry this in oil for a bit, but given that this is a campfire recipe, I won't be doing that. Hot oil near campfires for frying is a very high-level skill with a lot that can go wrong. Speaking of which, one of the reasons you're adding this to hot water is under the assumption you may have had to sterilize it through boiling. This recipe is a very good way to make boiled water that you need to survive taste a bit better. Once you've got the water hot, add the field garlic and turn the heat down to however much it requires to actually sustain a simmer. Probably low to medium low. Now you're going to want to simmer this for at least 10 minutes, maybe even more depending on how roughly you chopped your field garlic. As that's simmering, cut up the rest of the field garlic as you would chives. They are indeed very similar. Once you're happy with how much this is simmered, turn off the heat. And with that heat off, now's the time to add in the rest of the field garlic. Since these are only going to barely cook from the residual heat, it'll preserve a fresher flavor. Make sure to season it for taste as well. Mine needed a little bit more salt, and if you've got it, a little splash of vinegar really helps. So here's how it looks. The broth is very clear, and the individual pieces of field garlic are still quite green. Alright, let's give this a try. Not bad, which is not as easy to say for a lot of wild edibles. No off flavors or textures. Well, chopping them up really takes care of the texture thing, but very good. I'm expecting some of you might have been expecting me to wax poetic about how natural and wild and fresh this is, but for a lot of wild edibles, that's true. A lot of them are very tasty, But for a lot of them, that thinking gets dragged kicking and screaming into reality. And this is usually one of them, but this soup isn't half bad. I would certainly eat this, especially if I had nothing else. Overall, it really just tastes like you made it with garlic and chives. It's quite good. Certainly good enough to be worth eating once in a while to save a little money. And of course, this is a base for a lot of wilderness cooking. You can add wild carrots to this, garlic mustard. If you've managed to catch or hunt something, you can stew it in this. It's very versatile. Well, that's about it. Not a bad result, all things considered. And it's a very useful survival skill, so I suggest you do give it a try at some point. And hey, the result's not all that bad either, so might be worth giving it a try on a camping trip of sorts. Either way, as always, I do hope you've learned something, and I wish you the best. Until next time.